Hey guys, it's me, Hilljoy. I'm back. Back from where? That's a good question. Where have I been? I'm not really sure. Here, kind of. It's definitely been a while. Basically, I didn't really film anything over the entire summer. And where have I been? Asked nobody. But I'm asking myself, where have I been? And when I think about it, my last video was about my thyroid and hypothyroidism, but it wasn't the end of it. So they addressed the slowing down of my thyroid by upping my medication. And by doing so, it was overshot whatever level I guess my thyroid wants me to be at, because they overshot it and I went into a more hyperthyroid state. And that wasn't fun. That was actually awful. And it still is. I think I'm better now. I think we found the right level. But instead of pretty persistent depression, I actually instead had persistent anxiety. And it was anxiety that didn't level itself. It didn't necessarily go away. It didn't necessarily go back to zero. And my typical self-soothing tools that I'd been taught in my prior years of therapy didn't work. So I had this unrelenting anxiety and a lot of psychological and behavioral patterns that came back. And that's old self-harming behaviors that were resulting from my anxiety. Like, not so much from my depression. I don't really self-harm when depression's a problem, but anxiety, that's a whole other ballgame. And it felt awful, the messages and the thoughts that I was getting from my brain. And it was a lot of noise in my head. And there was different levels of it, There was just even like the simplest thing, like I have to go to the store, and then there's a part of my brain that's all like... And then there was like the harder ones where we're talking about like panic attacks, anxiety attacks that just come out of nowhere, where then all the noise is more like complete survival reaction out of nowhere. And there wasn't much that I could do about it at the time. But what I could do about it, and what helped me cope with it, was the acceptance part again, the accepting. And this was my chance for me. And this is because it's not 100% gone. I still am having some serious anxiety issues. They're just not as frequent, and it's just more of an underlying. But it was the acceptance, which is a huge part of mindfulness. And I wasn't connecting it before, but I was starting to connect it now, especially with my therapist's recommendations. So I got some books and really paying attention to this concept of accepting me in my entirety. This was my chance to study me in an anxious state and to really recognize how uncomfortable and painful at times it could be, terrorizing, and how I would do anything to try to avoid it. Do anything to not feel that way. But it was helpful enough for me to just say, like, I'm being lied to by my own brain right now, so I can't listen to that. I can't listen to that noise right now because it's not true. They were just thoughts. Whether I was in a helpless situation where I didn't have a lot of control over it, I still always at least had control of myself, and I could always have that conversation and know I'm just anxious, and then maybe I could start to talk to myself and talk myself down. But I'm telling you, though, times when it was more like this, that didn't really happen. Those conversations are really hard, and so I just have my panic attack. And maybe I'm lucky to have somebody around me that knows that I have them, to just tell them I'm having one and ask them to either hold my hand or just to be with me while I try to work through it. And it's not a perfect tool for me, and I know that mindfulness and that kind of self-acceptance is a practice, but I'm just like a little baby beginner at it, and that's one of the positive things that I've been working on in my absence from YouTube in the meantime. Especially now that hyperthyroid symptoms might be as much of a part of my life as the hypothyroid symptoms. And another thing I learned is I actually might prefer the hypo a little bit more, because at least I feel like I have a little bit more practice with my depression than I do with my anxiety. But who knows? I think the anxiety is a good gap to fill. So it's not all been hardness and stress. I mean, no more stress than I was already feeling. It's just been difficult. There's been really amazing times mixed in with some really terrifying and difficult times. A lot of them produced by my own brain. Fun. Fun. I'm probably going to expand more on this topic in future videos, especially now that I realize there's a gap in my practice with my anxiety. So we're going to, once I edit this, I'll know where the gaps are, and then future videos will come from that. Love you guys, as always. If any of you are still stuck around since my absence, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all who have subscribed, and hopefully I'll see you guys face to face in the real world. Until then, I'm gonna say goodbye and then see you guys in the next video. All right. Oh, yeah, go to outro. I got nothing. I sure don't know. Just trying to figure it out.